Hi, everyone. Welcome back. I'm Jana Parker, licensed educational psychologist, and I'm here today with Jesse Roselin, who is the head of school for Pacific Preparatory School. It's a little bit of a tongue twister. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Glad to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Jesse, tell us a little bit about you and tell us a little bit about Pacific Preparatory School. You are actually the second in my specialized schools um, uh, section of my website. So I'm really excited to have you here to talk about what your school provides.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm a Bay Area native, born and raised in Marin County, and then basically just migrated south. I went to school, high school, Marin Academy, and then went down to Stanford for school, joined Teach for America, and taught eighth grade at Cesar Chavez School in East Palo Alto. Got my multiple subject teaching credential, so I was really steeped in education, love teaching. But I really felt that I wasn't able to make as much of an impact as I wanted to. And so after Teach for America, I really went into one-on-one tutoring. And this is in 2002. So yeah, almost 20 years ago now. And it was really an awesome time for tutoring. Tutoring was just starting to take off as an industry, and I was able to work one-on-one with all kinds of learners. I sort of found my niche working with middle school boys.
Oh, wow.
At the time I was 25, I rode a motorcycle. I really
You were
connected.
cool.
Oh, they thought I don't know, maybe I was as cool as I could be. Um, and so I was just really connected with them, and I was able to speak to them in a way that engaged them. And I really talked with them about how, like, school is a game. You have to learn how to play the game. Like, if you learn how to play the game, you know what the rules are, you do well. And they really liked that analogy. And so I was able to help a lot of kids. So over time, I just naturally started working with these kids, and then homeschool cases started to come to me. So there would be like David was a seventh grader, and he was kicked out of school, and his parents contacted me and said, hey, can you just homeschool our son? And I said, well, I do tutoring, but I do have a multiple subject teaching credential, and so I was able to do that. That process of homeschooling him is eventually what led to Pacific Preparatory School.
Hmm.
So back in 2002 was when I first started homeschooling. And then over time, I developed more curriculum, I hired more teachers, and really built out the whole school system. So now we have 195 teachers that,
Wow.
for me, we're worldwide. So we teach students in Denmark, in Fiji, in Australia, in Tahiti, in London, everywhere, in America, all over America.
Wow.
So it is truly awesome. I don't know, it just makes me feel so good to be able to help kids in a way that they haven't been helped before, in this sort of, like, a lot of times they don't feel special, like they're just one kid in 20 or one kid in 30, and they don't get the attention that they need in terms of maybe based on their learning style. And so we are able to customize everything for them. We customize the curriculum. We do assessments at the beginning to see where they are with math, with English, with the other subjects. So yeah, it's just great. And it's kind of, I feel it's terrible, everything that's happened with COVID, and it's been such a struggle for me, my family, and everyone in the world. And at the same time, it really has changed education. Some for the worse, clearly, like distance learning is very tough, but it has also led to an educational revolution. And many parents are starting to think outside the box. And that is actually what's happened with Pacific Preparatory, is we're getting many more inquiries because parents are seeing us as a real option to help their kids.
Yeah, yeah. Tell me a little bit more about, so with this shift and this change, and parents are seeing that potentially there are other options rather than just typical school. What is it that beside, I understand individualized learning, but tell me a little bit more about like, what does their school day look like? Do the kids have different teachers? Are they going to school with people who are in their area or beyond? Is it all online? Do you have campuses? How's it all work?
Yeah, great questions. So what I decided to do was to not have a brick and mortar school. And that is the biggest hurdle for parents and kids to overcome. And we are not a school for everybody. A lot of kids really need that brick and mortar school to thrive. They need that in-person, uh, basically in person with peers, and have everything that comes with that in a normal traditional school, right? Now, what we've done is we've just jumped over that, and we do one-on-one either in home or online.
Hmm.
So before COVID, we were doing much more in person, and we do in person in the San Francisco Bay Area and Los Angeles. But we did about 25% of our teaching online, which allowed us to teach worldwide. But now with COVID, it's gone up to 99% online.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's what everyone's doing. Um, and we found, I think we were nervous, frankly. We were nervous about this idea of just going online. And I was a little, even though I'm really into tech, and I'm really into um, just dialing everything in, from like dock cameras to helping parents even set up their computers and their software and their apps and like everything. We're like very hands on with that. But still, I was nervous about not having that in person, because I, as a teacher, really relied and depended on that. But I found that just like you and me sitting here, you can still develop a great relationship online. It's just a little bit different. And I think now that we as people have gotten more used to it, it's made it easier. I was even especially skeptical of the little kids, because so I have three kids. I have a third grader, I have a kindergartner, and I have a preschooler. And I was really worried about my kindergartner doing Pacific preparatory classes online, and he loved them. He totally thrived. So even I had some reticence about like, is this okay? And COVID sort of pushed us into it. We had to, even though we'd been doing it before, we hadn't been doing it in mass. And it has just been a great success. So I think one of our benefits is like, because we don't have a brick and mortar campus and we just work either in home or online, we're able to allocate our resources differently. So a lot of schools have to allocate their resources and spend a lot of money on the actual facilities. Whereas all we focus on is we focus on paying the teachers and then the management team to develop the curriculum. So the resources go, I think, more appropriately to where you as a parent would want them. Like, if you don't really care about the facilities, you care about your teacher and you care about the curriculum that's delivered, that's where everything is going.
Yeah. That's a really good point because teachers are so underpaid for the amount of work that they do, in brick and mortar schools.
Yeah, and they don't get the support. That's the
Right.
other thing is, so, when I've seen, we have, both my kids are in public school also. So this is a good example of how we're running in parallel. They're both enrolled in Pacific Preparatory for enrichment, and they also do distance learning through their public school. And
Okay.
I know both of their teachers are two of the best teachers in the world, but my kids still aren't learning that well because it's over distance learning. Like Miss Mountseer, the best kindergarten teacher ever, still, it's so hard for her to teach reading to Milo because you can't really teach that over Zoom. It's not, she's the best, but it's still, the medium just doesn't work that way in
Yeah.
terms of her having a class. One-on-one, you can do it, but
Right.
you can't do it with the 20 kids.
Right. Right. Um, let's talk a little bit about this distance learning and what's happening this year with kind of this stunted, the stunted year in terms of academic growth for all kids. Like, what are you seeing there, and how are you in Pacific Preparatory? How are you? uh, trying to kind of supplement or get around that with your curriculum?
Yeah, it's well, I first of all, it's very sad. I find it distressing to see that this whole generation of students are going to be missing a lot of academic growth. This, and not, I mean, I don't know how long it will go on, but this whole period of time. Um, if I were to guess, I'd say that they're at best getting like 50% of what they would normally get. In some cases, more like 30% or
Yeah.
25%. Um, yeah, so it's tough. And I think, we're all soldiering on, we're all trying to support one another as a community, and the schools are pitching in, and the teachers are doing the best they can, and parents are supporting. And, it's like everyone's hands on deck, but it's just the reality is that kids are going to have academic deficits.
Mm-hmm.
And what we're doing is, one, we're just talking with parents as a resource to say, do assessments, like do periodic assessments. You don't have to wait until a whole year goes by. You don't have to wait until June to say, oh, what did my child miss in third grade? You can do an assessment for math and language arts, just those two core subjects. That's what's really the most important for Common Core in the lower grades anyways. When we
Right.
get into the higher grades, it's different. But, assess that. You do a quick math assessment, a quick language arts assessment, either with a professional, or you can go online. There are a lot of assessments, and we have resources on our that I can link to also. And then that can help with getting a tutor or enrolling in a course. I think a lot of families are really overwhelmed. Like there's so much distance learning going on already that they don't want to add in a tutor, but it's different. Like the
Mm-hmm.
kids are actually okay. Like my kids are downstairs right now doing piano online with their piano teacher. That's different from them doing the distance learning. Having a tutor one-on-one is very different, and they can thrive with it. So I think there is, like you said before we got on here, you said it's about making that first call or making that email. Like you got to sign up, get the tutor going, and then it will benefit, and the kid will feel more confidence as they keep those skills up too. So that's the biggest thing. And so and not to confuse my roles, but I have two, well, I actually have three companies. I have Tutor Core, which is the tutoring division. I have Pacific Preparatory School, which is our school. And then I have the Tutor Core Foundation, which is a 501c3 nonprofit that does scholarships and community service grants. So those are sort of the three divisions that I run. And so if parents come to us and they need tutoring, they go to Tutor Core. If parents come to us and they need courses, then we do that. So in some cases, it's more appropriate for the kids to plug in and add supplemental tutoring to whatever course they're taking in their local school. And in other cases, it's more important for them to actually have a whole course running in parallel with a prescribed curriculum.
Got it. Got it. Okay. So um, that's a really good segue because I was interested in knowing how your school works. So if someone were to come and say, you do K through 12, right?
Yes.
And a family comes to you and wants to do school with Pacific Preparatory. How is that different than, um, like, what is their, I'm interested in, like, what does their school day look like, and how many different teachers do they have? Like, do they have different teachers for different subjects? Or is it, like, I guess probably depending on the grade level, but I'm sure you can answer that. And then if they need tutoring, kind of how does that look? And do you have any, specialties in what subjects you have tutors for, or is it all of them plus executive function coaching? That's a big question, but
Yeah,
go
well, let
ahead.
me start with the first question about what the day looks like. And this is this is it's a different kind of school experience where the day is run much more efficiently. So if you come to Pacific Preparatory and you are a full-time student, you will be taking 2 to 3, depending on your grade level, you'll have 2 to 3 hours of class 4 or 5 days a week. So it's very customized. Some families say, oh, you know, it would be nice to have the 5th day off. We could go on field trips. We like to go up to Tahoe. We're on the ski team, whatever it is, right? They have that flexibility. Olympic athletes come to us, and so they can say, oh, I need to, or artists, or anyone who has a craft that they need to dedicate like 20, 30 hours a week to, they can say, you know what, I'm rowing crew in the morning early, and then I want to do my classes starting at 11 a.m. Other folks may say, hey, I want to start right at 8 a.m. and be done by 11. So because we're compressing the hours down into 2 to 3 hours a day, it's just so much more efficient. But the one-on-one allows the kids to cover the academics faster in less time.
Right.
So there's so much time in the school day that you think schools are designed originally to be basically a place for the kids to be for 8 hours when their parents are in the factories. When we moved from the agricultural economy to the industrial, everyone started going to the factory. So kids needed, instead of working on the farms, they actually needed to be in school. That's why we have the bell system at schools. You hear those bells, it's just like the bells in the factory. You're training the kids just like that. It's a little bit sad when you think about it, but it's also just where the history comes from, right?
Yeah.
And so in this way, you basically have the kids there, and so the whole day is sort of brought out to 8 hours. So what we've done is we've taken out all those different things. So but the other thing that you have to think about is we've taken out lunch, we've taken out PE, things like that. So we have to then talk with the parents about how they're going to get some of these activities in the rest of their life. So if they get their schoolwork, the academics done between like 8 and 11, then we want them to be on like a soccer team in the afternoon, or gymnastics, or art class, or we want them to be engaging with other kids so they're building all their socialization skills as well.
Right.
Sorry, no, go ahead.
So do they have one teacher or different teachers in that period of time?
So if you start at the high school level, most high school students have a separate teacher for each subject because they're much more specialized.
Right.
Sometimes we might, like, let's say you're taking pre-calculus, AP Bio, AP Literature, and Spanish. It's unlikely that we're going to have one person that can do all those 4. That's a really good specialist. So in those cases, you usually have 4 separate teachers. Sometimes we'll get the math and science and the humanities together, because often teachers can specialize in those. So you'll have anywhere between 2 and 4 teachers at the high school level. When you go down to middle school and lower elementary, we usually like to have 2 teachers. So we found over time that it's kind of nice just to not see the same teacher every day. It's nice to have a little bit of variation. So ideally you meet with teacher 1 either Monday, Wednesday, and the other Tuesday, Thursday, or you just alternate the courses a little bit, and it just keeps things a little bit fresher.
Yeah. And so this could, before COVID, it was happening in home or online, and now it's mostly online.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Do you work with kids who have different kinds of learning disabilities? Are you able to modify curriculum if needed, if if impairments are more significant, or if they're not able to access the standards? How does that work?
Yeah. So we work with all learners, all types of learners. We work with neurotypical kids. We work with kids that have ADD, ADHD, executive function issues. We have autistic nonverbal students that we work with. We work with a wide range of kids. And the reason we can do this is because it's all one-on-one. We're not trying to group kids into a classroom. So we have exceptional special education teachers that are super skilled with working with our autistic students. Students that really had not seen success in a traditional school environment are thriving with us in the one-on-one. So, and in some cases, there are some unique cases where we are still doing in person with, because and then according to, depending on state protocols and whatnot, it sort of it has to start and stop depending on whether it's allowed.
Yeah.
But we really are, in some cases, these kids cannot do online. It's just, it doesn't work for them. And we recognize that and make accommodations for that.
Yeah.
When we're accredited by Cognia, and so Cognia came in, and it's a long process of accreditation. And one of the things they kept on asking us is like, well, how can you serve all these kinds of learners? How can you, because when you look at most schools, you look at a school like, Charles Armstrong, or you look at a school like, let's see, like Drew, you have these schools that really focus in on a certain type or a category of students, and they really specialize in that, which is awesome. But for us, we're able to just do it one-on-one. And so we're able to choose from one of our 195 teachers and be like, oh, this is a good match for this kid. So it allows us to work with kids across the spectrum in all these different ways.
Yeah. There's always like, for students who really thrive with one-on-one, because in my school job, I work with kids who have, some pretty significant needs, and we're always kind of like on this fence of, we want to provide the amount of support that students need in an individualized way, but at the same time, we also want to support their growth in being able to function within a group, and being able to like understand what's going on socially, or pay attention to something, even if something else is going on that's distracting, or, ask for help when you need it, even if somebody's not right next to you, So how do you go about supporting students with that other piece, or making sure that they're going to get that other piece? Because the academic piece might be better one-on-one, but if they're not learning it in a more kind of natural setting, then sometimes that can limit them in other ways.
I absolutely agree. And I think that it's definitely a cost benefit analysis. Like, as a parent, looking at my own kids or thinking about consulting with other families and looking at it, you have to say, like, what are they going to be missing and what are they going to be gaining? And in a situation where a child really would benefit from all of that peer-to-peer interaction and learning those social skills, and that might be their main deficit, and that's where they really need the attention, I don't think Pacific Preparatory would be a great fit for them. Or if it is, it might just be one course. We wouldn't do the full time. We'd say, okay, they also struggle in math. Okay, well, let's do one-on-one with math. And that's what's so cool, is we're a la carte. You don't have to do all 4 or 5 courses. You can just do one at a time. So they could say, oh, I just want to do math, and I can then still do my other school, or I can have my group therapy, or I can have so you have all these different, basically we give you more options. But I wouldn't say that it's the best choice for someone that really has a lot of those, like where their needs are really the social. Like we would probably actually talk to the parents and say, I don't think we're a good fit for you. Because, or we're not a good fit for you permanently. We might be a good fit. You could come in for a semester. That's sometimes what people do, is we're a bridge. So if they're having a lot of dysfunction in their current school, let's say it's February, we have rolling admissions. So they can just come in February to June, they're with us. And then we can help them matriculate to another school in the fall.
Yeah, got it. Oh, and I can imagine that right now, are you inundated with phone calls? Because I know in the public schools, like there are so many kids who are failing classes who have never failed classes before, so there's like a lot of makeup we have to do. Are you getting a lot of those calls?
We are starting to get parents who are thinking about either January or summer, to say like, hey, and because we can fit in a course over the summer for credit, especially for high school students that want to do like a remedial course. And they could say, okay, I want to replace it. I want to do algebra 2 over the summer, and we could do that.
Okay.
Our biggest challenge is that people don't know about us. We have capacity, but people just don't know we exist. The more students we get, the more cool stuff we can do. Like with this, because of COVID, that led to a big influx of students. So we were able to start a book club. We were able to start a yoga club. We were able to do like paint night activities. All these cool things that allowed more social interaction that we couldn't do before. And so now we have like little like fourth graders in a little book club of like 5 other fourth graders with a teacher. It's really heartwarming.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. So then the tutoring is a separate kind of entity. So how does the tutoring work?
The tutoring is just pretty straightforward. It's that's where I started, and it's K-12, all subjects, and
this is whatever they need.
Whatever they need. Executive functioning, study skills. We do a lot of executive functioning and study skills, but it's not. I mean, the key difference is it's not teaching a course. It's not accredited. It's not a school. So it's more of what you would think of like helping with a specific subject or test prep, like the SSAT or SAT or ACT, or helping with a particular class that they're already taking. If a parent wants us to bring curriculum and actually teach a class, that's specific preparatory.
I have a lot of families asking for executive function coaching, and I'm wondering about, do you do that for students of all ages? Do you specialize in a certain kind of age bracket? And then what does that coaching look like?
Yeah, I mean, I am, to be totally straightforward, I am not the expert myself in teaching executive functioning. So I've hired a whole group of teachers and it's their expertise. But overall, I can say that we do deliver executive functioning skills across the board, kindergarten through 12th grade, although mostly it tends to start, I mean, we can start with baby steps with the lower elementary, but we really start seeing it more in middle school and high school. I mean, that's where it comes apart. And a lot of what we do is breaking things down and starting with really like getting organized, really focusing on calendaring systems, finding a calendaring and organizing system that really works for the student is paramount. Because we'll have parents coming in saying like, well, I got them this planner, or the school got them this planner, or the kid wants to use the iPhone, and we're having all these, things are online, and why do I have to have a planner if all the assignments are online? And it's like, okay, we just got to get all your assignments in one place. And we need you to be able to access that and have reminders and an easy way to check on it. So we basically involve them in the process and everything we do to have buy-in, so they buy into it. And then we need to continue to support them on a daily or weekly basis so that they can develop a new habit. Because as you and I both know, like we're adults, any kind of habit, if you have like an exercise habit, it's not just going to take off unless you really have it ingrained and you do it repetitively, whatever your goal is, 3 times a week, 5 times a week, so that you actually build that habit and becomes kind of a rote thing. And so parents sometimes get frustrated. They say, well, it's been 10 sessions. Why isn't it happening yet? I said, well, it's only been, 10 sessions seems like a lot, but like we're actually building new behaviors here. And and that will serve them well forever.
Yeah, absolutely. Executive functions don't just develop overnight. Yeah. They ask like, well, how long is this going to take? I'm always like, I don't know,
It totally depends on the child too.
Yeah.
I mean, some kids really are on the cusp already and they can click in really quick, and they just need a few tweaks here or there, some tools that help them. I think for me, I get super excited about the online tools. Like I have this Apple Watch right here, and this has been my lifesaver during COVID when there's so much going on. It has my calendar right here with my next event that's coming up, and it pings. So I'm like, oh, I'm going to meet with you at 4:00. I got to get on Zoom. Like it helps me, and I'm, 43.
Right. Yeah. And I had helped I'd helped one of my students set up her calendar. And then I realized that she didn't have a watch to alert her, so then I had to make sure that those notifications were going to her phone, and like
Right.
I didn't realize as I started, I'm working with students during COVID that, high school students, they did not use an electronic calendar prior to COVID. They did not use it. They didn't have to know when their classes were about to start because they got to school at a certain time and then they knew that they would walk from the next place to the next place when the bell rang, so there was less need for them to really keep track of time. It was all the executive function was done for them. Now they have to be sitting in their bedroom scrolling through social media or playing a video game and then remember that they need to log back into their class. So it's a whole different, and that's like beyond their executive function
Oh,
capacity, really,
oh, sure.
so
Yeah. I mean, I've bought 5 different Alexas to put in the kids' rooms and the kitchen and everything. And I set reminders for each of them on, oh, Charlotte has music, reminder, five
yep,
minutes. Milo has PE, reminder, 5 minutes.
right.
And then I have an old iPad that I put, you can lock it into just like one screen so the kids can't play around with it. And so it's just locked into the Gmail calendar. And then it has highlighted Milo's yellow, Charlotte's pink, and they can scroll down because every day for them is different too. They have
Yeah.
all these different classes. Now they're actually going to school, but they're not going to school until noon, and then they come back at 2:30. So like it's bonkers. And
Yeah.
so we need like multiple tools. I mean, I myself check that thing. Like I have to check that iPad to see what's
Right.
going on because it's too much to keep in my head.
Right. Right. Yeah. We have Google. So like, we'll say like, hey Google, set a reminder for, 8:15. And then I have to go like, no, wait, we shouldn't be setting the alarm. The
Right.
kids should be setting the alarm, so I have to like transition it to them. So I'll have to say, Channing, set your Google, set it. And then he will. But like, unless we start to give them that, I mean, we're going to have to scaffold it for a while, but unless we start to give them that cue, but then have them do it, they are not going to ever do it on their own unless they have to start doing it, but we have to remind them to actually do it.
Well, and the scaffolding it's helpful also for parents, I think, and other professionals to like hear us talking about the stuff. It seems like we're talking about like the daily household stuff with school at home and all that. But, I think some parents get stuck because they're not seeing any other models. So if your only model is what's happening in your home, and you are sitting there with your kid the whole time and you are logging them into Zoom the whole time, like that might be appropriate if you have a kindergartner or if you have a child with special needs, or if you have, it depends on your kid, of course.
Yeah.
But a lot of the times I think the kids can do more than we think they can. And
Right.
so if you actually start looking at these examples, like my kids now, even Milo, who's in kindergarten, he logs in on Zoom on his own and he
Yeah.
punches in the password.
Yep, yep. The highest level executive function is metacognition, and it's being able to think about what you're doing and plan for what you have to do in the future, and have goal directed persistence, and like think about that thing out there that you have to do, and like backward plan being able to get from here to there, and what are the steps that you're going to need to get you there. And so the more we do for our kids is the more we are inhibiting them from problem solving and planning and using their executive function. They have to, if they don't use it, they are not going to practice that skill. And if they don't practice that skill, they're not going to build that skill. And if they don't build that skill, they're not going to have it. And then we're going to say they have executive function deficits.
And I think, to riff off what you're saying there, with education today, I think we should really be teaching kids analytical skills, the skills to think, problem solve, have executive functioning skills, because the jobs that will exist 30 years from now when they're adults are going to be completely different. Many of them, some of them will be the same,
Mm-hmm.
but many of them will be completely different. And we can see that right now during COVID, how our whole work lives have completely changed overnight.
Yeah.
And so in a way, it's a comparison to say like, the world does change and it just changed so quickly due to the virus. But if you fast forward 30 years in the future, a lot of the things that we're teaching the kids to do were like, kids were very focused. I think, of course, social interaction is clearly very important, and I'm a big believer in it. But I also wonder in the future, like, if you're working at Facebook, might you just be at a computer in your own silo in your own home, and you're interacting with all of your friends through virtual reality?
Yeah.
I mean, we don't quite know where things are going. And I think this is why I love the work at Pacific Preparatory, is to allow kids to really think, to think critically, to think creatively, and then they can be some of the leaders in the future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We really need that, because I talk about this a lot, but I think that kids are spending far too much time not participating in their own lives because they're so distracted by video games and social media and movies. Everything is so accessible to them,
Yeah.
and they just spend their time scrolling or, mindlessly watching thing after thing after thing that just keeps going. It never stops unless you pull them away from it. So they're just really passively existing. I had a person at the grocery store, at the checker at the grocery store the other day. She was probably like 20,
Mhm.
the checker, and she very seriously, this very seriously happened. I said, um, can I get a book of stamps? So I'm sending Christmas cards. And she said, yeah. She goes, can I ask you, what are those for? And I said, well, they're for sending letters or Christmas cards. It's how you pay for your postage to get from place to place. And she said, okay, because someone asked me for them the other day, and I thought, wow, those are really some expensive stickers.
Wow.
I was like, yeah, nope, but like she hasn't been exposed to it. She hasn't been exposed to sending a letter. That just baffled me. I don't
Well,
know how
I
much time she
I
spends
I
online,
find
but
that story amazing and
yeah,
funny, very funny, but also I'm trying to think, and I'm like, when I was a kid, there were so many examples of my parents using stamps to mail everything. They paid
right,
everything by check. Every bill was paid by check.
right,
And now, literally, I pay most everything on my phone with
right,
my mobile banking app. And
yeah,
so, my kids, we have made an effort to actually, write thank you notes and show them how to mail them. And oh, sending letters to Santa,
yeah,
that with a stamp, that was a
right,
big deal. But
right,
otherwise, you really have to make an effort with some
right.
of these things because they email and everything makes it
Yeah, it
a little
doesn't
bit,
exist
yeah.
anymore. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I was like, wow, but yeah, like she hasn't been exposed to it, and because it doesn't really exist. So if her family didn't do that and everybody's just, sending things via email on their phone, and she's never seen the check before and she doesn't, yeah, I mean, I could
And
see why that happened. It really baffled me.
and in a related area, we can also have a side discussion about why the US Postal Service is not doing that well if people
Ooh,
aren't buying stamps.
right, right. Well, okay, so we totally have been off on a tangent, but I loved it. So
Me
let's get
too.
back to let's get to like, how do people find you? Um, what's the best way to contact you, and what happens when they call or email? Like, who do they get? And
Yeah,
you know, take me through that.
super easy. Basically, you just go to, well, there are a couple different ways. One, you just go to pacificpreparatory.com and you can find all of the information there. You can email us, you can submit a form that's like an inquiry form that says contact me. You can call us, numbers on the website. It's also 314 PAC Prep, 314 PAC Prep, really easy. So call, email, website, very straightforward. We get back to people right away. When you call, you will usually talk with Liz, and Liz will basically do all of the basic intake. And then she'll work with Melissa, who's our program director, and they will basically take you through the application process. So answer any questions you have. A lot of the questions we have are questions that you brought up in this interview. What does the schedule look like? When, how many hours a week? What courses? What are the teachers like? So they take them through that whole process. Then once they submit the application, we turn things around in like 10 days. So like if you want to start, like if the teachers are ready, we can probably start in a week, but usually it's about 10 days because we want to have a little time to build the curriculum, and we'll start, but we can kind of also get things, if we in a sort of more of an emergent situation, we can jump in and start with like some basic curriculum, and then in the next couple of days we can modify it as we get to know the student better. We run our first assessments, see where they are in each subject, and then tweak the curriculum to adjust to their needs.
Yeah, great. Okay. Well, I have really enjoyed talking to you today and having, whatever families I can send your way. Like I'm always looking for places that may be a good fit for the students that I work with. And that's kind of why I do this whole project. And then I now know a lot about you. So that's amazing because I see, just on our little networking group, I see Tutor Core and I see
Right.
Pacific Prep a lot, but I have never actually been able to connect with you. So yeah, I'm really glad that we were able to do this. And I thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. I really enjoyed talking with you and getting to talk about education and COVID and how to help kids in all these different ways.
Yeah, yeah. All right. Well, I'm sure we will touch base in the future. And thanks again.
Okay, thank you.